Chapter 3 is about retail customers. In this chapter, we're going to look at the effects of the external environment on retailing. We're going to discuss how recent changes in the population and in social and economic trends affect the way the consumers behave and the implication of these changes for retailers. And then we'll conclude with the development of a consumer shopping and purchasing model that incorporates all of these factors to describe the overall shopping and buying practices. To manage effectively and gain a differential advantage over the competition, retailers must first understand their customers and the environmental factors affecting them before developing any plans. The easiest way for retailers to differentiate themselves is to satisfy the customer's needs and wants better than the competition. Customer satisfaction, different from customer service, occurs when the total shopping experience of the customer has been met or exceeded the customer's expectations. This is important because it costs retailers 5 times as much to get a new customer into a store as it does to retain a current customer. Not only retailers, but also the nation's economy depends on the customer having a satisfactory shopping experience. This slide shows the historically strong relationship between changes in the American Customer Satisfaction Index and changes in future consumer spending. The fact that spending and satisfaction generally move together should not be surprising because customer satisfaction leads to repeat business and increased purchases. After all, a satisfied customer will be encouraged to engage in future spending, while a dissatisfied or unhappy customer will be more hesitant. Customer services are the activities performed by the retailer that influence the following 3 elements. Pre-transaction, which is the ease at which a potential customer can shop or learn about the store's offering. Transaction, which is the ease at which a transaction can be completed once the customer attempts to make a purchase. And then post-transaction, which is the customer's satisfaction with the product or service after purchase. Common services provided by retailers, in addition to having the product that satisfies the customer's needs and wants, include alterations, fitting rooms, delivery, gift registries, credit, extended shopping hours, short checkout lines, gift wrapping, parking, layaway, availability of in-home shopping options like being able to shop online. None of these services is actually the merchandise or service being offered for sale. It merely entices the customers that the retail is targeting. If the customer is dissatisfied with either the product offer or the services provided, then the customer is less likely to choose that retailer in the future, thus decreasing future sales. Knowing what products to carry, as well as determining which customer services to offer, is a challenging problem for retailers as they seek ways to improve the shopping experience. The retailer should know and understand its different customer segments and their needs to enhance the customer's shopping experience. This slide shows the 3 important types of trends: population, social, and economic, that all retailers must monitor because they will affect the way customers undertake the shopping process. All retailers must perform 3 basic strategies. Get as many of the targeted consumers into the store as possible. Convert these consumers into customers by having them purchase merchandise. And then perform the first 3 strategies at the lowest cost possible that is consistent with the level of service customers expect. If the retailer doesn't understand its customers, it won't be able to accomplish the first 2 strategies. Market segmentation is the method retailers use to segment or break down heterogeneous consumer populations into smaller, more homogeneous groups based on certain characteristics. Market segmentation helps retailers understand who their customers are, how they think, and what they do. It enables retailers to build a meaningful strategy based on the consumer's needs, desires, perceptions, and shopping behaviors. Only after realizing the various segments to either target or not target can a retailer hope to satisfy consumers' needs better than the competition. Retailers often find it useful to group consumers according to population variables. This is useful for 2 reasons. Such data is often linked to marketplace needs, and the data is readily available and can easily be applied in analyzing markets. Retailers have long viewed an expanding population base as synonymous with growth in retail markets. However, some key trends that retailers should be aware of are the nation's overall growth rate has declined during each of the past 3 decades as families are having fewer children. The U.S. population is expected to increase only 1% a year from 310 million in 2010 to 341 million in 2020. The majority of the U.S. population growth will be the result of immigration. Any increase in domestic population growth will mean an increased demand for goods and services. However, the growth will be nowhere near the 80% increase experienced over the last half century. Still, even minimal growth in the total population will mean opportunities for retailers. With population growth generally slowing, the key to retail performance is shifting from opening new stores or expanding to strategies built upon increasing the productivity of existing stores, stealing market share from competitors, and managing gross margin through controlling selling price and cost and increasing the productivity of existing stores. Yet a shrinking number in the overall population of one's shoppers need not mean a retailer should consider closing some existing stores or halt growth plans. Another growth opportunity for retailers is international expansion. However, it is likely that this is a limited time opportunity. Demographers are predicting a major decline in worldwide fertility rates, which will lead to a global population decline, a radical notion in a world brought up on the idea of overpopulation. While it will take some time, global retailers should be prepared for depopulation. The age distribution of the U.S. population is changing. The most significant change today is the bulge of early baby boomers moving into their 60s and account for more than 25% of the population. However, many experts claim that for retail planning purposes, this group is much too large and diverse to share a single lifestyle, life stage, or purchasing proclivity. Seniors should not be viewed as homogeneous. In the past, they were classified as anyone aged 60 or older. However, because people live longer, more useful categories should be utilized. One useful way to categorize seniors is in terms of their health, good or poor, and wealth, inadequate or adequate. So there's 4 types of seniors: good health, adequate wealth, good health, inadequate wealth, poor health, adequate wealth, poor health, inadequate wealth. Seniors in general have more wealth than several generations ago due to improved Social Security benefits, Medicare, and retirement savings, and these seniors are relatively healthier as compared to previous generations. So the largest market growth has been with the active seniors who have both the health and wealth to enjoy him or herself. Also, since different retailers tend to serve different age groups, the changing distribution of the U.S. population poses many challenges and opportunities. The Generation Xers, those born between 1965 and 1977, are another often overlooked age group. Unlike the baby boomers, this age group is a declining percentage of the population. Today, there are 47 million of these consumers who are more skeptical, have a more balanced work ethic, and are less impressed by titles, authority, or status than any other group. Xers are especially cynical about other things held dear by previous generations, particularly baby boomers. Some people suggest the behavior of Xers is the result of their growing up during the years leading up to and following the end of the Cold War, as well as coming of age during the recession of the early 1990s. Generation Y, also known as the Net Generation, I Generation, Google Generation, Echo Boomers, and Millennium Generation, are those born between 1978 and 1994, with a population of almost 80 million strong. This group is emerging as a major buying and consuming force in the economy. In many ways, they are the most optimistic generation in this country's history. They tend to have higher disposable incomes than their age group in prior generations, are interested in good health, and tend to not rely on others for their success. Research has also found that Generation Y provides a wealth of potential to employers because of their vigor, enthusiasm, talent, early experience, and high expectation. They want a professional career, but place a higher priority on family and home. The most significant implication of an aging population for retailers, particularly those targeting boomers, is that their customers' big spending years are generally behind them. However, retailers must resist the temptation to overlook these segments. Few retailers fully appreciate today's older boomer consumer. Instead, they continue merchandising and marketing to younger and less affluent Xers and Yers. Retailers who ignore boomers, thinking they're past their spending prime, are limiting their success. Besides understanding the various needs of each age segment, retailers must also understand what motivates consumers to spend. Young adults are, by their very nature, acquisition oriented. These first-time renters and home buyers need to acquire material objects and usually judge their progress by such possessions. Older adults tend to conserve what they have. Therefore, as the population ages, a significant driving force for total economic growth may dry up unless retailers provide consumers with a reason to shop. This graying of America will have enormous consequences for businesses beyond retailing, as older consumers tend to be skeptical and less interested in shopping. Retailers must be able to speak the older consumers' language, avoid talking down to or patronizing them, shun phony friendliness, and understand that as they age, older consumers need easy to navigate store layouts and clearly labeled merchandise. It is doubtful, however, that all the baby boomers will behave as their parents did a generation before them. Retailers who make this assumption will be mistaken. In addition to altering the types of products offered to these aging segments of the population, retailers will also need to shift the types of services they provided as they are to gain the consumer's dollars. In general, retailers will have to use bigger print, provide brighter lighting in parking lots, and install fewer displays that block store aisles. Also, they may need more handicap parking spaces in their parking lots or even offer valet parking services. They would also be wise to rethink the way they portray and target senior citizens in their advertising. Today's successful retailers will be those who come up with new and ingenious ways to not just attract this audience, but also compel them to walk in the door. Retailers must not forget about the Gen Xers and Gen Yers. These two groups are not only different in age, but also significantly different in their buying behavior. It is only in the last half century that the United States has moved from a predominantly white population to a society rich in racial and ethnic diversity. Today, non-Hispanic whites account for only 68% of the U.S. population. The ever-growing minority population is comprised of nearly as many Hispanics as blacks, surging numbers of Asians, and a small but growing Native American population. Non-Hispanic whites are predicted to be no longer making up the majority of population by 2040. Instead, they are now expected to fall by 2050 with the rising Hispanic population. The population of African Americans and Asian Americans are also expected to grow in 2050. Consequently, the term minority is likely to have a very different meaning in the next few decades. Given the growth projections for the U.S. population overall, retailers must understand Hispanic shoppers and the projection to represent $1.5 trillion in purchasing power. Probably the most important statistic to remember is that by 2020, the Hispanic American teen population will grow by 62% versus a 10% rate for all teens. In fact, in 2020, they will be the largest U.S. teen population. One of the two most common mistakes that retailers make when targeting Hispanics is assuming that their population in the United States is homogeneous. But most U.S. Hispanics are Mexican. Some are from other Central and South American countries. Others are from Spain, and even others are from Caribbean nations such as Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. The other common mistake made by retailers is that all Hispanics behave in the same marketplace. Actually, second-generation Hispanic Americans who have been immersed in American culture are very different in their shopping behavior than foreign-born Hispanics, who usually view themselves as completely Hispanic and have minimal contact with or interest in mainstream U.S. culture. However, as language skills improve, many choose to join the mainstream. Recognizing that there may be differences amongst Hispanic Americans, we can see that there are different lifestyle attributes for a cross-section of Hispanic Americans in comparison to all shoppers. Retailers also need to recognize the shopping habits of African Americans. For instance, when shopping for groceries, half of African Americans use a shopping list, almost half use coupons, and 61% use a frequent shopping cart. Retailers can also note the fact that Asian teens and college students are frequent purchasers of fashionable apparel and designer labels. Compared to their white counterparts, they spend 30 to 40% more on apparel. Over 50 million Chinese travel abroad annually. Many of these Chinese are entrepreneurs that have enormous fortunes. It's estimated that there were nearly 1 million millionaires in China in 2010 and over 207 billionaires. The location of consumers in relation to the retailer's location affects consumer behavior. Retailers should be concerned not only with the number of people, their ages, and their ethnicity, but also with where they reside. Consumers, especially as they age, will not travel great distances to make retail purchases. All consumers want convenience and will therefore tend to patronize local retail outlets. In fact, your proximity to a retail store is a strong determinant of whether you shop on the internet for certain merchandise. The U.S. population has been and will continue to move toward the West and the South. Growth opportunities in retailing will be the greatest in those areas. This changing geographic shift means Northeastern and Midwestern retailers are experiencing slower growth, and national retailers are adding stores and distribution centers or warehouses in the South and West. Retailers must realize that consumers in different geographic areas have different purchasing habits. Therefore, retailers have developed micro-marketing that involves tailoring merchandise in each store to match the preferences of its neighborhood. It is made possible with the use of the optional stock list approach and computer software programs that match neighborhood demographics with the product demand. Metropolitan statistical areas are the metropolitan areas with population greater than 50,000. 84% of the U.S. population lives in these areas. However, the urban or metropolitan population varies considerably by state. In the past, the migration to MSAs was directed more toward suburban than central city areas, yet some experts feel that a significant increase in gas prices may reverse this trend. Every shift in consumer population patterns has major implications for retailers, especially when it comes to expenditures made for household products. There are also opportunities for retailers in smaller markets. During the past decade, retail activity has grown rapidly in secondary markets, areas with population less than 50,000. Historically, most chain retailers have ignored these markets, but in addition to their rapid growth, secondary markets are attractive because of the low level of retail competition, lower building costs, cheaper labor, and fewer building and zoning regulations. As MSAs have begun to stabilize, secondary markets have become more attractive. The population of the U.S. at present is very geographically mobile and changes residence about a dozen times in a lifetime. Two major factors for this heightened mobility in the country is the country's divorce rate and the state or regional economic slowdown and the loss of jobs in various areas in the country. With a recent trend toward higher education, which results in more job variation over one's lifetime, retailers can only expect consumer mobility to increase. Mobility presents a problem because retailers serve local markets and tend to cater to well-defined demographic groups. As the population moves, retailers may find themselves needing to cater to new members of its target market. Several social trends that affect a retailer's performance are the increasing level of educational attainment, the state of marriage and divorce, the makeup of the American household, and the changing nature of work. The education level of the average American is increasing. In 2010, 87% of individuals aged 25 or older had a high school degree, and 30% had a bachelor's or advanced college degree. Gen Xers, who were between the ages of 33 and 45 in 2010, are the most educated generation ever. However, as soon as the last members of Gen Y reach age 25, they will become the most educated. Educational attainment, which is very closely linked to a parent's education, is the single most reliable indicator of a person's income potential, attitudes, and spending habits. College-educated consumers differ in their buying behavior from other workers of the same age and income levels. They are more alert to price, quality, and advertised claims. It is important for retailers to remember that, in many ways, people with some college best define the term average American. They have more money than high school graduates, but less than college graduates. They also fall between these groups in their propensity to shop in department stores, spend on apparel, buy new cars, travel, read books, buy TVs, and invest in stocks and bonds. Given the rise in the education level of the consumers, retailers can expect consumers to become increasingly sophisticated, discriminating, and independent in their search for consumer products. They will also demand a staff capable of intelligently dealing with their needs and wants, and this may present problems for many traditional service providers. Married couples are one of the slowest growing household types in the U.S., as well as worldwide. Retail opportunities exist in that there will be increased need for a large number of homes for single-person households to be completely furnished. Store hours need to be changed to meet the needs of this market. The U.S. has seen a rapid increase in the divorce rate. Since 1960, the divorce rate has increased 250%. Professor Becker was awarded the Nobel Prize for theorizing that families, just like businesses, rationally make decisions that maximize benefits. The theory suggests that in a traditional family, working husbands and stay-at-home wives each performed labor that, when combined, provided the greatest payoff for the time involved. However, as women's wages rose, it became more profitable for them to enter the labor force. As a result, spouses became less dependent on each other and divorce rates increased. An interesting side effect of the soft economy over the last 5 years is that unemployed spouses became more dependent on the one that had the job, and they were less likely to divorce, even if unhappy in their marriage. This trend extended to when both partners were unemployed, since there was often little choice but to stay married and try to survive in one household. As the economy has started to recover and people are moving off unemployment, you can expect a rise in divorces, and as explained earlier, this is generally good for retailers. Divorce often stimulates retail purchases because a second household must be furnished. Divorce may also impact the way people shop once they are settled into their new homes. Retailers must make significant adjustments for divorced working women with children by adjusting store hours, providing more consumer information, and changing the product assortment. Because households are the basic consumer unit for most products, household growth and consumer demand go together. Yet because of the differing sizes and habits of various generations and change of the makeup of households is notoriously hard to predict. Some interesting trends that retailers should be aware of between 1990 and 2010, the number of people living increased by 37%. This trend, which represented only 1/4 of all households, represents an increased desire for privacy, an increase in young adults delaying marriage, an increase in never marrieds, and a large increase in the number of people who live alone after the death of a spouse. The number of unmarried couples increased by 383% since 1980. This trend, although it represents only 6% of all couple households, is significant to retailers because it represents a purchasing unit that is hard to understand by conventional household or family norms. The boomerang effect, so-called because the parents think the child has left for good, but they just keep coming back. It is estimated that over the next decade, 40% of children will return to live with the parents they previously left. And then there's also the sandwich generational family or tri-generational family, where all three generations, so the parents, grandparents, and children, are under the same roof because parents of the household head or spouse move in with their children. Today, the combination of so-called home aloners or singles or empty nesters account for nearly 75% of all U.S. households. This market is not concerned about back-to-school sales or other family-oriented retail activities. Instead, they're more interested in HD TVs, high social image, and gourmet foods. However, it is important that retailers recognize the difference within this market. The older segment of the single household market will require special attention from today's retailers. Whether because of deterioration in institutional confidence or perhaps because of the overall prosperity of our economy and the way of life of Americans, we are identifying less with our work. In fact, work has become less central to life. At the same time, people's hobbies are becoming more work-oriented, and there is a rise in self-employment and home-based workers. The explosion growth of the internet and cloud computing have allowed many people to set up home-based businesses. In addition to working from home or running a home business, many consumers are obtaining meaning from consumption. They have literally become durable goods junkie, collecting RVs, boats, workshops, HDTVs, swimming pools, and so on. To pay for these extras, these people often hold several jobs. Americans are increasingly becoming less loyal to their employers. Nearly 19% of workers have held their job for less than 12 months, and the median length of service in a job is 4.4 years. It's particularly a problem in retailing. For example, with entry-level personnel, turnover approaches 75% or more per year. Consequently, retailers need to find ways to enrich job experiences and lower turnover. One recent study found that turnover in the supermarket industry costs $5.8 billion annually. One major opportunity for retailers is employing home-based and disabled workers. Home-based workers can handle telephone inquiries and do clerical work or bookkeeping. Likewise, disabled workers may represent a previously untapped pool of talent for the retailers. Since many individuals are holding multiple jobs, retailers can tap into this pool of individuals for part-time workers. Retailers have done this in the past, primarily at the clerk level. Today, there are opportunities for retailers to employ part-timers in a variety of positions, including accounting, inventory control, merchandising, buying, and store management. Changes in income growth, the declining rate of personal savings, the increase in the number of working women, and the widespread use of credit in our economy will impact retailers. In 2010, the median household income was up with a 70% increase over the median household income in 1990. As incomes rise, families tend to have higher disposable incomes, but all groups have not shared this income increase equally. Incomes are continuing to shift among the various classes of Americans. Today, the American upper classes have a higher share of the nation's aggregate income in comparison to 1980. Economists tend to view income from two different perspectives. There's disposable income, which is all personal income minus personal taxes or your take-home pay. and discretionary income, which is disposable income minus the money needed for necessities to sustain life. Another often overlooked implication for retailers is that many Americans now use the internet, especially something like eBay or Craigslist, as a source to sell unwanted or unneeded merchandise to increase their income. A major criticism of the U.S. economic system is that it does not reward personal savings, but encourages spending. The government's numbers regarding the savings rates fail to address the treatment of capital gains or losses. When the government measures disposable income, it counts wages, interest earned, and dividends. However, it overlooks realized or unrealized capital gains or losses. Consequently, changes in wealth that result from variations in home and equity values are omitted. The government's numbers also count the full cost of purchases made over time, such as cars and appliances. Thus, the government's data tends to undervalue savings because it fails to consider the wealth effect. The wealth effect claims that for every $100 of additional wealth generated in an individual's stock market holdings, that individual will spend $4 or 4%. Such spending lowers the national savings rate because as the stock market rises, spending increases without an increase in wages and salaries. Although the national savings rate in the U.S. is only a fraction of the rates in Europe, Japan, and China, it must be remembered that each country measures income and savings differently. Comparisons between countries is often unclear. Retailers have enjoyed continued sales growth over the past decade. However, this growth is not due to significant increases in household income. Instead, retailers have benefited from spending rather than saving mindset of the consumer. Some economists fear that in another decade, retired boomers will begin to remove much of their money from the stock market. If this occurs in great numbers, then the United States could see another declining market, and that would likely result in the reverse wealth effect. This is because consumers losing money in the stock market tend to save about 4 cents on every dollar lost. Again, 4%. Another fear is that because of good health, many boomers may postpone retirement, leading to a surplus in the labor supply. As the marketplace becomes saturated with available workers, overall wages fall, which could negatively impact future retail sales. The percentage of women in the labor force from all age groups has increased significantly. In 1970, 43% of all women over the age. Today, it is just under 59%. However, that number climbs to over 72% for women with college degrees. This significant rise in the number of working women has protected many households from inflation and recession. In fact, many economists suggest that working women has been the nation's secret weapon against economic hardships. Another reason for the huge increase in household income for dual wage earner families is that where once a professional man would marry a secretary or a school teacher, all admirable occupations, but not the highest paid, today many professional men are marrying professional women. As a result, the household incomes for these couples are increasing above the norm. The rise in the number of working women has many retail implications. As the number of dual wage earning families increases, many of these families have less time for shopping and are more prone to looking for convenience and additional services from retailers. These individuals prefer that retailers hold sales and special events in the evenings or on weekends. Time-pressed shoppers also find that price is sometimes less important than convenience, availability, and service. Brick-and-mortar retailers, in addition to making the shopping experience pleasant, if not exciting, must develop strategies that accommodate these customers' needs, like extending store hours, and offer conveniences like express checkouts. Brick-and-mortar retailers should also provide alternatives to in-store shopping, like catalogs or online shopping, even delivery if they want to compete for time-pressed shoppers' store loyalty. Retailers have long offered their own credit cards to customers. However, today the trend is away from retailer store-branded credit cards towards third-party credit cards. consumers in 2006 were staggering under an estimated $2.2 trillion in consumer debt. In the United States, more than 70% of households have at least one general purpose credit card, and more than 85% of households with annual incomes over $50,000 have at least two credit cards. Credit card firms are seeking for the trend to continue. They offer promotional incentives such as free airline miles, rebates on new auto purchases, and rebates on future purchases. For the retailer, credit card use has increased sales and profits. Retailers benefit from credit cards. Research shows that customers spend more when they use a credit card than when they pay with cash. However, since the growth in credit has been outstripping the growth in personal income, it is evident that households will face a crisis as income growth slows or becomes negative. Such massive debt must be paid off, and that activity will negatively impact future retail sales. Now that the population, social, and economic trends of today have been examined, a model that describes and to some degree predicts how these factors come together to affect consumer buying patterns can be developed. This is called the consumer shopping and purchasing model. This model examines the consumer shopping and purchasing model. It suggests that consumer behavior is a process with a series of stages or steps. So there's a stimulus, the problem recognition, search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase, post-purchase evaluation. So stimulus involves a cue, external to the individual, or a drive, which is internal to the individual. A cue is any object or phenomenon in the environment that is capable of eliciting a response. Common examples of retail marketing stimuli are advertisements or point of purchase displays, coupons, salespeople, or free samples. All of these examples of cues are controlled by the seller of retail. In addition, there are cues that the retailer does not control, like word of mouth advertising. A drive is a motivating force that directs behavior. Drives can be physiological, based on hunger or the need to stay warm, or they can be learned, like the desire to spend spring break in Cancun. When the drives are strong, they are more likely to promote purchase behavior. Individuals can be exposed to both of these stimuli. Retailers are competing with virtually all organizations and individuals for the attention of the consumer. To compete for this attention, retailers may employ various types of stimuli. Consequently, the individual is always involved in passive information gathering, which consists of receiving and processing information regarding the existence and quality of merchandise, services, stores, shopping convenience, parking, advertising, and other factors that a consumer might consider in making a decision of where to shop and what to purchase. Stimuli can often lead to problem recognition. Problem recognition occurs when the consumer's desired state of affairs departs significantly from the consumer's actual state of affairs. When this happens, the consumer is in a state of unrest until finding a way to resolve this difference. The level of one's desire to resolve a particular problem depends on two factors: the magnitude of the gap between the consumer's desired and actual states, and the importance of the problem. The next two stages in the consumer shopping and purchasing model, active information gathering and evaluation of alternatives, will determine the degree of the problem solving that occurs. Individuals solve problems by searching for information and then evaluating their options or alternatives to reduce risk. The amount of problem-solving activity consumers engage in varies considerably depending on their prior experience and the need to reduce financial, personal, and social risks. Consumers learn quickly, and when they locate the problem, brands and retailers that are good at satisfying their needs at a low or acceptable level of risk, then the degree of problem-solving decreases. This slide will illustrate the three levels of problem solving. There's habitual, limited, and extended problem solving, which are determined by whether or not the consumer has strong preference for a specific brand or retail store. So for habitual problem solving, it occurs when the consumer relies on past experiences and learns to convert the problem into a situation requiring less thought. The consumer has a strong preference for a brand to buy and the retailer from which to purchase it. By relying on past experience, the consumer has already arrived at an adequate solution to many of their more routine problems. Frequently purchase products of relatively low cost and low risk, like toothpaste, milk, bread, soda. They tend to be in this category. However, products of a higher value can also be in this category. So then limited problem solving occurs when the consumer has a strong preference for either the brand or the store, but not both. Although we refer to this category as limited problem solving, deciding which brand or store to select may still be an extensive process. Problem solving should therefore be viewed as a continuum. And then extended problem solving occurs when the consumer recognizes that the problem exists, yet does not have a strong preference for either the store or the brand. Once consumers recognize that a problem exists and believe a potential product solution exists within the marketplace, they will engage in problem solving. The first step is active information gathering, which is when the consumer proactively gathers information. Second stage in problem solving is the evaluation of alternatives. The evaluation of alternatives typically involves 3 stages. In the first stage, the consumer develop a set of attributes on which the purchase decision will be based. The set of attributes refers to the characteristics of the store and its products and services. In the second stage, consumers narrow their consideration set to a more manageable number of attributes. In this phase, the consumer might visit the stores or browse online to gather more specific information, like price ranges, to narrow their list. And then in the final stage, consumers directly compare the key attributes to alternatives remaining on their short list. Here, the consumers are very active in their search for specific information and often begin ascertaining actual prices through store visits or browsing on the store website, and maybe preliminarily negotiating when appropriate. One of the most important variables of problem solving is the source of information used by consumers. It's important for retailers to understand what information sources their target market prefers to use and match their communication programs to these resources. Based on information gathered and evaluated in the problem solving stage, the consumer decides whether to purchase and which product and retailer to choose. Purchase stage may include final negotiation, application for credit if necessary, and determination of the terms of purchase. So using cash, using credit card, what have you. Sometimes unexpected last-minute factors can intervene during the transaction phase and preempt the purchase. For example, the consumer can become unaware of unanticipated costs such as taxes, delivery fees, or other charges and decide not to buy. The purchase stage is often seen by retailers as an opportunity to use suggestion selling to sell add-on or related purchases, such as extended service warranties, batteries for toys, and impulse merchandise. Both online and brick-and-mortar retailers use this technique. One of the most important moments in the use and evaluation stage occurs immediately after the transaction, in the first hours and days in which the consumer uses the product and service. During this critical time, consumers form lasting impressions regarding the soundness of their purchase decision. These impressions will likely influence all future purchase decisions. In the event of a problem, consumer dissatisfaction can lead to post-purchase resentment, where the consumer's dissatisfaction results in resentment toward the retailer. If post-purchase resentment is not identified and rectified quickly by the retailer, it can have long-term negative effect on the retailer's bottom line. Fortunately, if a retailer is proactive and its customer satisfaction program and responds quickly to budding resentment, it can be overcome. Retailers also must remember not to get angry with the customer. In fact, the retailer should be thankful for them because they're doing the retailer a favor. They're bringing it to their attention, and that helps the retailer to see a problem, fix the problem, get ahead of it, and make sure that there's no problems in the future for other customers. By listening to the customer's complaint, establishing proactive policies such as full satisfaction guarantees, and boldly communicating these policies to their target market, retailers are likely to hold on to more of their customers in the event of a mistake. Beyond this, many retailers have started customer follow-up programs, such as customer satisfaction reply cards given out at the time of the purchase or mailed to a customer several days later. Many large retailers, especially chains where individual stores are not under central control, such as franchises or dealerships, have taken the customer satisfaction process one step further. They have instituted programs that measure customer satisfaction on an ongoing basis and compare customer service ratings of individual retail locations against pre-established benchmarks or a chain-wide average. That is all for Chapter 3. Chapter 4 is about evaluating competition in retailing. So we're going to talk about the behavior of competitors as an important component of the retailing planning and management model, how effective planning and execution in any retail setting cannot be accomplished without proper analysis of competitors. We'll review the various models of retail competition, the types of competition in retailing, and the evolution of competition. At the end, we'll examine upcoming retail evolution in non-store retailing, developing retail formats, global and technological changes, and the use of private labels as a strategic weapon. So today, population growth rates are slowing, and as a result, national and regional retailers can grow only by taking sales away from their competition. However, in many regional communities, the area's population and disposable income have grown even as the nation's economic base contracts. Such areas offer retailers the opportunity to grow without having to take sales away from their competitors. So a retailer must always be on the offensive, studying the changing competitive environment, especially its local competition, and differentiating itself from that competition. Only by creating a differential advantage that is extremely difficult to copy in both time and money can a retailer hope for continued success. The successful retailer will visit retailers of all sizes in its trading area to learn what merchandise and service competitors are and are not offering, which have the most appealing store designs and atmosphere, which offerings receive aggressive pricing emphasis, and which promotional tactics are successful. A small retailer's competition is not just the large discount stores in the area. Small retailers would be wise to check the local drugstores that stock similar items, then internet for competitive pricing information, and category killers that might offer a deeper selection and a better level of service than the discounter. It is important to remember that no retailer, however clever, can design a strategy that will completely isolate it from competition. This is true even for the retailer that has done an excellent job in developing and following its mission statement, setting its goals and objectives, and conducting its SWOT analysis. Customers will always have shopping choices. The rapid growth of discount department stores, convenience stores, and catalog and internet retailers attest to this fact. Further, as the cost of entry into retailing is relatively low as compared with other businesses, and merchandising innovations are often unable to be patented, competition will always remain as other retailers seek to copy a profitable strategy. Competition in retailing. Competition can be waged on many fronts, and a retailer must be clear about what advantages it will emphasize and where its resources will have the greatest impact in attracting and satisfying customers. This framework helps to identify your primary competitors as well as threats from secondary competitors. Retailers compete for target customers on 5 major fronts or factors: the price for the benefits offered, service level, product selection, the merchandise line width and depth, location or access, that is the overall convenience of shopping for the retailer, and customer experience, the customer's positive feelings and behaviors in the purchase process. In any competitive environment, retailers must clear a minimum acceptable threshold on each of these criteria in order to stay in business. Further, they must distinguish themselves in the marketplace by dominating on one key factor and differentiate themselves on a secondary factor within the primary competitive set. Many retailers compete for customers on a local level and must be aware of their direct and secondary competitors in their shopping area. Customers typically will not travel beyond local markets to purchase routine household goods and prefer to shop in the most convenient way possible. When they do travel beyond local markets, however, it is usually because their city or town is too small to support retailers with the selection of merchandise they desire. Economists use 4 different economic terms to describe the competitive environment in the retailing industry. Pure competition is rare in retailing and occurs when a market has homogeneous products and many buyers and sellers, all having perfect knowledge of the market, and there's ease of entry for both buyers and sellers. A pure monopoly occurs when there is only one seller for a product or service and will set its price accordingly. This is because consumers who already have one unit will tend to place lower value on any additional unit. This is called the law of diminishing returns or declining marginal utility. Monopolistic competition is a market situation that develops when one of 2 situations occurs. Either the retailers sell different products in the eyes of the consumers that are still substitutes of each other's, or sellers may be the only ones selling a particular brand but face competition from other retailers selling similar goods and services. Oligopolistic competition occurs when relatively few sellers or many small firms who follow the lead of a few larger firms offer essentially homogeneous products, and any action by one seller is expected to be noticed and reacted to by the other sellers in the market. Retailing can be characterized as monopolistic or, in rare cases, oligopolistic competition. The distinction between the two lies in the number of sellers. Conventional economic thought suggests that for oligopoly to occur, the top 4 firms have to account for over 60 to 80% of the market. While some national retailers do have large market shares, oligopolistic competition does not actually occur on the national level, but consolidation in many industries has left a few large players in some product categories. However, if local prices become too high, merchandise selection too limited, or services too poor, residents of these communities will travel to larger communities to shop. This is known as outshopping. Most retailers face monopolistic competition where they are confronted with a negatively sloping demand curve. In other words, consumers will demand a higher quantity as price is lowered, assuming that a retailer has chosen the merchandise that the consumer wants, communicates the value of shopping at his or her store, and makes the product available. The typical retailer faces a demand function like the one shown on this slide. One important thing to keep in mind is that the true price or cost the customer pays actually includes 3 components: the price the retailer charges, sales tax on the purchase, and delivery or transportation costs. Customer behavior nowadays implies knowledge of the competition alternatives. Customers have a greater knowledge of available alternatives, and the difference in product features will often patronize a wider range of retailers. Interestingly, this is often exacerbated by retailers themselves. As retailers become more proactive in their marketing efforts, consumers become increasingly aware of a wider range of alternatives, better prices, better services, and better features. This knowledge leads many customers to migrate from local retailers that do not sufficiently measure up to their growing demands. So in most cases, higher prices will result in less demand for the retailer because households have limited incomes and many purchase alternatives. This reality should suggest that retailers cannot be profitable by setting prices at the highest possible levels. Retailers will find it necessary to set prices somewhere below the maximum possible price, but above zero. Many customers place a value on attributes other than price when selecting a place to shop. Therefore, the retailer has to make decisions about the non-price elements: merchandise mix, advertising and promotion, customer service and selling, the store layout and design of the retail mix in order to influence the quantity of merchandise it sells and the profit level it achieves. Non-price variables are directed at enlarging the retailer demand by offering customers benefits beyond simply the lowest price. Although certain non-price variables may be more or less advantageous given the retailer's target market, competing on price alone is a no-win situation because price is the easiest variable for competitors to copy. In today's intensely competitive retail marketplace, you can expect exactly that competitive reaction. Here are some ways a retailer could make use of non-price competition. The retailer could position itself as different from the competition by altering its merchandise mix to offer higher quality goods, greater personal service, special orders, handling, or a better selection of large sizes. The retailer can offer private label merchandise that has unique features or offers better value than do competitors' products. The retailer could provide other benefits for the customer, like free parking or a kids' play center, so the parents can drop off the kids while the parents shop. The retailer could master stock keeping with a basic merchandise assortment. Most retail decision variables, whether price or non-price, are directed at influencing demand. Profitability of these decisions depends on the marginal cost of the action versus the marginal revenue it generates. With so many retail establishments competing against each other, the profitability of all the retailers suffers. A good measure of competitive activity in the market is the number of retail establishments of a given type of 1,000 households. Overstore market occurs when the number of stores per 1,000 households gets too large. These retailers face a major performance imperative because often their return on investment is below their cost of capital. As a result, they will implement both price and non-price actions as an attempt to increase both sales and profits. Understore market is a more favorable situation for retailers. It happens when the number of stores per 1,000 households is small in comparison to other markets. With too few retailers to adequately service local demand, profits may be high enough to attract new retail competitors, or existing retailers may be enticed to expand. A market is in equilibrium in terms of number of retail establishments if the return on investment is high enough to justify keeping capital invested in retailing, but not so high as to invite more competition. A retailer's suppliers should be considered both partners and competitors for the customer's dollar. Suppliers are critical for the retailer's trade, but they are also in competition for gross margins throughout the supply chain. Every extra dollar charged by the supplier is one less for the retailer when the retail prices are stagnant. The retailer must develop a loyal group of patrons that encourages the supplier to accommodate the needs of the retail partner. When they provide a unique product or promotion, suppliers can be a critical competitive advantage to retailers. Many specialty retailers across categories vie to be the first with the latest products or to stock exclusive merchandise. Further, suppliers can cooperate in improved merchandising and operations, such as developing a package design that is easier to read on the shelf or establishing efficient inventory management systems. It is possible to merge the preceding discussion of competition in retailing with the classification schemes used by the Department of Commerce in conducting the census of retail trade. So intra-type competition occurs when two or more retailers of the same type, as defined by the North American Industry Classification Systems codes, compete directly with each other for the same household dollars. This is the most common type of retail competition. Inter-type competition occurs when every time different types of retail outlets sell the same lines of merchandise and compete for the same limited consumer dollars. So some examples of inter-type competition could be not only have supermarkets like Whole Foods and Food Lion taken market share away from fast food restaurants with their home meal replacements, but also travelers returned from trips are bringing home meal replacements home from the airport. Many auto retailers needing to create new additional revenue streams due to recent sluggish economy are beginning to sell auto insurance. Convenience stores like 7-Eleven or Wawa sell not only motor oil and related auto care products, but also fast food, lottery tickets, and pain relievers. Home Depot and Lowe's are competing against each other with they're competing with Walmart and with each other on different home products. So those are different types of the inter-type competition. Another concept that helps to explain the nature of competition in retailing is divertive competition. This occurs when retailers intercept or divert customers from competing retailers. The type of behavior can be either a form of intra-type or inter-type competition. Pop-up stores are temporary stores relatively small in terms of scale that are set up for a relatively short period of time, often at a high shopper traffic point to explicitly intercept shoppers. Another area where divertive competition has been on a rapid escalation over the past few years is attributed to internet-based innovations like Groupon or Living Social that enable local retailers to send electronic coupons to households in retailers' trade area or nearby trade areas. Flash sale e-tailers are another area of rapid growth in divertive competition. They're member-only websites where merchandise is offered at deep discounts, but only for a limited time, such as 48 hours or less. To comprehend the significance of divertive competition, one needs to recognize that most retailers operate very close to their break-even point, and that's the point where total revenues equal total expenses. So a discussion of the evolution of retailing not only provides a better understanding of the history of retail formats, but also enhances our ability to make predictions about the future. Several theories have been developed to explain and describe the evolution of competition in retailing. So we have the wheel of retailing, the retail accordion, retail life cycle, and the resource advantage theory. So the wheel of retailing theory, which is illustrated on the next slide, is one of the oldest descriptions of competition in retailing. It states that new types of retailers enter the market as low status, low margin, and low price operators. However, as they meet with success, these new retailers gradually acquire more sophisticated and elaborate facilities, making them vulnerable to new types of low margin retail competitors who progress through the same pattern. So the three stages are entry phase, where new retailers enter the market as low status, low margin, low profit operators. This entry phase allows retailers to compete efficiently and take market share away from the more traditional retailers. Then there's the trading up phase. The new retailers experience success and acquire more sophisticated and elaborate facilities, often becoming less efficient. This creates both a higher investment and a subsequent rise in operating costs. And then there's the vulnerability phase. And that's where the retailers must raise prices and margins to cover rising costs. In doing so, they become vulnerable to new types of low margin retail competitors who progress through the same pattern. So this appears to be the case today in like outlet malls. Retail institutions tend to evolve from outlets that offer wide merchandise assortments to specialized stores that offer narrow assortments, and then return to the wide assortment stores, continuing this pattern again and again. This contraction and expansion of merchandise assortments suggests the term accordion. So that's where we get the retail accordion example. Some believe that retailing institutions pass through an identifiable cycle called the retail life cycle. This cycle has 4 distinct stages. It starts with introduction, proceeds to growth, and then maturity, and then ends in decline. So introduction is the stage that begins with an aggressive, bold entrepreneur who's willing to develop a different approach to retailing of certain products. Most often the approach is oriented towards a simpler method of distribution and passing the savings on to the consumer. Oftentimes it could be a different version of an existing product or service centered on a distinct product assortment, shopping ease, location convenience, advertising, or promotion. During the growth stage, sales and usually profits explode. New retailers enter the market and begin to copy the idea. Toward the end of the growth stage, cost pressures arise from the need for a larger staff, more complex internal systems, increased management controls, and other requirements of operating large multi-unit organizations. Consequently, late in the stage, market share reaches its maximum level, but profitability begins to decline as retailers cut margins to maintain market share. As growth slows, retailers seek to alter their existing offerings in order to create a more profitable and successful niche. In maturity, 3 factors cause market share to stabilize and profits to decline. First, the managers have become accustomed to managing a high growth firm that was simple and small, yet now they must manage a large, complex firm in a non-growing market. Second, the industry has typically overexpanded. And third, competitive assaults increase as firms with new retailing formats or more efficient methods proliferate in the industry. Although decline is inevitable for some formats, few people get their milk delivered to the door anymore. Retail managers will try to postpone it by changing their retail mix. These attempts can postpone the decline stage, but a return to earlier attractive levels of operating performance is unlikely. Sooner or later, a major loss of market share will occur, profits will fall, and the once promising idea will no longer be needed in the marketplace. The retail life cycle is accelerating today. New and more competitive concepts move quickly from introduction to maturity since the leading operators have aggressive growth goals and their investors demand a quick return on equity. Once a retail concept is proven successful, a retailer can have a successful public offering of its stock and raise significant funds for rapid national rollout and expansion. Once a retail concept is proven, it is not unusual for a retailer to open a new store every week, or if the store is smaller, such as a fast food restaurant concept, 1 new store every day. The final theory to describe the evolution of retail competition is the resource advantage theory. This theory is based on the idea that all firms seek superior financial performance in an ever-changing environment. Retail demand is dynamic because consumers' tastes are always changing, and supply is dynamic because as firms search for superior performance, they're forced to change the elements of their retail mix to match changing consumer preferences. Resource advantage theory illustrates four important lessons for retailers. Superior performance at any point in time is the result of achieving a competitive advantage in the marketplace as a result of some tangible or intangible resource. All retailers cannot achieve superior results at the same time. The retailer is able to use this entity, such as innovation regarding location, procedures, or merchandise selection, to offer greater value in the marketplace. And the retailer is able to use this resource, such as innovation regarding location, procedures, or merchandise selection, to operate its firm at a lower cost relative to competitors. The result is ongoing marketplace turbulence in which new retailer forms and offerings continually appear, and consumers continually shift their buying preferences and retail patronage. As retailers compete with each other through different combinations of resources, each of these multifaceted competitive positions can meet the needs of different consumer groups. The resulting fragmentation in the marketplace means that many different retail forms are viable as long as the consumer group is substantial and the retailer is astute in managing its customer relationships and operations. Retailers in today's ever-changing marketplace can expect dynamic changes in retail competition. Trends shaping the retail landscape include an increase in competition from non-store retailers, the advent of new retailing formats, heightened global competition, the integration of technology into current operations, and the increasing use of private labels. Non-store retail sales, including direct sales, catalog sales, and e-tailing, account for 7% of total retail sales. The growth of this form of selling is based on accelerated communication technology and changing consumer lifestyles. Thus, retailers need to continuously monitor developments in non-store retailing. For e-tailing, the general belief by retail experts is that electronic, interactive, at-home shopping is definitely the place to be. Every major player in the retail industry, computer industry, telecommunications industry, and the transaction process industry is committed to this growth. The only prerequisite needed for the internet's success is having enough consumers with access, whether it's by their personal computer, cell phone, or BlackBerry. As the internet grows, Americans will make increasing use of it as a shopping method. Many shoppers will opt for its convenience and broad selection. Browsing will be easier and the choice is more extensive. It is important to remember that the internet will not increase overall consumer demand. While online sales will definitely cannibalize store and catalog sales, they will not increase the average consumer spending power. Strategies by clicks and mortar retailers will integrate a single message, and seamless operations will be more powerful than the pure e-tailing strategy. A final point to remember is that e-tailers must pay attention to customer service. Most e-tailers do a good job during the busy seasons like Christmas and Valentine's Day. However, in an effort to reduce operating costs, they reduce their service standards at other times. Customers are demanding and they want basic service like email confirmation of orders and real-time confirmation of available inventory. Since customer service is particularly vulnerable for traditional retailers, e-tailers need to have their specific niche there. Retailing is continually evolving. New formats are born and old ones die. Innovation in retailing is the result of constant pressure to improve efficiencies and effectiveness in servicing the consumer. The pressure to better serve has also resulted in the shortened life cycle for retail formats. One such format that didn't achieve the success predicted was off-price retailers. They were similar to discounters with one important difference. While discounters offer continuity of brands, that is, they carry the same brands day in and day out, off-pricers, which are more opportunistic, carry only brands that they are able to get on special deals from the manufacturer or closeout wholesalers. Thus, the off-price retailers failed because the regular merchants, including discounters, became more competitive on the prices of the brands the off-pricers were selling. One highly successful and recently introduced format is the supercenter, which is a combination of a supermarket and discount department store that carries 80,000 to 100,000 products in order to offer one-stop shopping. These stores offer the customer one-stop shopping and lower the customer's total cost of purchasing in terms of time and miles traveled. Recently, the supercenter concept has even branched out to automobile markets. Recycled merchandise retailers are establishments that sell used and reconditioned products. As a result of the recent economic slowdown, recycled merchandise retailers have experienced the fastest growth of any retail format over the past 5 years. Recyclers have developed to serve specific markets such as pregnant women, people requiring large sizes, and children, or even offer specific merchandise such as toys, sporting goods, outerwear, and jewelry. Pawn shops, thrift stores, auction houses, consignment shops, flea markets, or even eBay are considered to be recyclers. With over 30,000 retailers seeking the protection of the bankruptcy courts annually, liquidators are needed to come in and liquidate leftover merchandise so that the troubled retailer can shut down or downsize. They assume responsibility for a retailer's leases, payroll, and other costs and agree either to take a percentage of what they sell or agree in advance to purchase the existing inventory. Running closeouts requires some very special retailing skills. Liquidators do more than $15 billion in sales annually and earn between 3% and 7% of the sales, or they take over the company entirely and take all the risks but make all the profits. Liquidators have a talent for pricing merchandise and estimating the expense of everything from ad budgets and payrolls to utility bills. The idea of renting and not purchasing an item for a limited number of items has been popular for decades. However, the recent slumping economy has generated a renewed interest in this format and for an expanded category of products. 3 versions of new rental formats have evolved. They're renting cars for hours, renting fashion items, and now even renting textbooks. The rate of change in retailing appears to be directly related to the stage and speed of economic development in the countries concerned, but even the least developed countries are experiencing dramatic changes. Retailing in other countries exhibits even greater diversity in its structure than retailing in the United States. New types of retailing have emerged from all areas of the world. These changing formats can be attributed to a variety of economic and social factors that are the same worldwide. A widespread concern for health, a steady increase in the number of working women and two-income families, inflation, consumerism, and so forth. Still, it's amazing that retailers from larger countries often do not have the same success compared to that of retailers in small countries when entering a new country. Retail experts attribute this failure by large country retailers to 2 factors: a lack of understanding of the new country's culture, and retailers from smaller countries have always had to deal with international issues if they were to expand. Technology is having and will continue to have a dramatic influence on retailing. Technological innovations can be grouped under 3 main areas: supply chain management, customer management, and customer satisfaction. Retailers on the forefront of technology who seek to understand their consumers will achieve higher levels of effectiveness in their efforts. The plethora of supply chain management techniques, such as quick response, just-in-time, and efficient consumer response, are already being enhanced by new initiatives such as direct store delivery and collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment systems. Direct store delivery systems provide greater accuracy and increased administrative efficiency, allowing retailers to achieve cost advantages. Advancements in DSD systems will create more efficient operations and stronger partnerships as global competition increases. Other supply chain systems, though still in their infancy, have a potential to move retailers and manufacturers far beyond continuous replenishment models in terms of reducing excess inventory levels, cutting out of stocks at retail, and efficiently meeting consumer demands. Recent testing of radio frequency identifiers, or RFIDs, on products might eliminate the item-by-item process completely. The RFID reader generates a low-level radio frequency magnetic field that resonates with the RFID tag's magnetic coil and capacitor, creating an electrical signal that powers a computer chip, which then transmits it back to the reader. As retailing continues to change, the increased use of private labels has emerged as a key business asset in developing a differential advantage for retailers. Private labels can set the retailer apart from the competition, get customers into the store, and bring them back. The following are some of the private label branding strategies currently being used by retailers. They develop a partnership with well-known celebrities, noted experts, and institutional authorities. They develop a partnership with traditionally higher-end suppliers to bring an exclusive variation on their highly regarded brand name to market. They reintroduce products with strong name recognition that have fallen from the retail scene. And they brand an entire store or business, not just a product line. That is all of the information for Chapter 4. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me through email. I am always here to help. Thank you.